Good evening, dear friends, and welcome to tonight's Truth Foragers here on the Boys in the Baltic Star channel. Someone's been playing with my camera. Disgraceful. I think it's the man. The man obviously doesn't want my face to be visible clearly. Let's set that up a bit more carefully. But yes, so thank you for joining us this evening. If you have joined us this evening. We'd first like to thank the Boys from the Baltic Star for making their channel available to us. They're very kind to allow it from time to time. I have heard apparently that Ewan is away, and so Luke and Ben have gone camping on Hampstead Heath together, which sounds like a delightful manly experience, Rick.
It does. You're completely right. There is, I mean, when I first heard them say that, I assumed they meant Hampster Heath,
Ah,
for obvious reasons, and I'm not entirely sure that they didn't mean that. So it may be a place that I'm not familiar with. But if it's Hampstead, that's a very nice part of London.
it is. I think they'll have a delightful time, and they've left this space available for us. And we intend to fill your ears, dear snufflers, with a lot of food for thought if one puts food in their ears. Um, Rick, you wrote a pamphlet about taking in nutrients through the ears, I believe.
Yes, I did write a pamphlet on that, though I should make it clear that after careful experimentation, I came to the conclusion that it wasn't really advisable.
Mm.
Um, it turns out that the ears aren't particularly effective at getting food to the stomach, and it does become a little bit awkward when you can no longer hear things.
Although I still remember you were in good spirits when we spent the 4 hours in A&E with tiramisu in your ear.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, for one thing, I'm sure people were saying pretty unkind things about me, but I couldn't tell, so that's
Exactly.
always a good thing.
Uh, for you, you're a man that's used to hearing people say a lot about you, and so to not hear it for a change must be
It
quite
is a
calming.
relief. And I'm also a man who, when someone says something unkind at all, I naturally assume it's about me because it usually is.
It's, I don't think it's a safe angle to take on such things. Assume the worst, and then you can't be disappointed.
This is exactly right. Paranoia is, after all, our best friend.
Yeah, paranoia is your best friend. Skanky Dave is mine.
Fair enough. Yes. Yes. Also, there is a stray cat that lives near me, which technically is not so much a friend as arguably a predator, but he's stopped attacking me on sight now, so I think that's progress.
Did I So did you take on the suggestion I made about rubbing his feces around your ankles?
I did not. I actually did some research, and it turns out that um, cats are less aggressive if you stop hissing at them, which I hadn't known.
Hmm.
And also the solution to the injuries turned out to be shin pads. You
Ah,
strap a couple of them to the cat, and it can't pursue you anywhere near as quickly.
this is good. This is good to know. This is excellent stuff. I assume a pamphlet is in the works already.
Yes, I suspect the correct handling of stray cats will turn into a pamphlet, if for no other reason than they can be used diagnostically for all sorts of conditions.
Mm. What other condition may you use it for?
Well, I often use it to discover, for example, whether someone's allergic to cats.
Hmm. Makes sense to me.
And most people will sneeze if you um, push a cat into their face if you've had the forethought to grate pepper onto the cat first. But that does pose a problem, I think, for the cat because they do tend to clean themselves quite carefully. So cats are not keen on pepper.
No, well, it's understandable. It was how I managed to disentangle the cat that you thrust into my face last week. Because we got quite entwined. between us. It was hard to know where the cat ended and where I began. But the pepper certainly caused, well, both of us to rear back rather suddenly.
I mean, to be fair, it is quite hard to tell where a cat ends and you begin if it's on your face, but I blame mostly your beard for that.
It's true. I think most of it is still the cat, quite frankly.
I think quite a lot of it was the cat. I mean, it was not a small cat.
It certainly wasn't. I was impressed with the size of the beast you found.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes. I mean, we don't have like wild leopards roaming around here. Um, the the truth is, though, that some of the domestic cats we have are larger than you might think.
yeah, so very much they look small from far away, but when you're up close, they're suddenly quite large.
It is a problem. Yes.
Well, dear viewers, we could chatter away all day, and we often do. Days are often lost to us in just idle chit chat, as it were. But we're here for a reason this evening. We are the Truth Foragers. And dear viewers, we're here to enlighten you as to two new urban myths, legends, mysteries that we have been researching recently. Um, dear viewers, if it's your first time, you're very welcome to hang around, stick around for as long as you see fit. If you have any questions, any points, any input to add to our research, please feel free to put it into chat. We shall incorporate any questions or anything you say into what we have to say and see if it jives with or against. It's okay, isn't it, Rick? It's okay for two people researching the same thing to come up with two different beliefs and outcomes.
I think that's the minimum we should strive for, yes.
So I've never known a man to argue against himself more often than you.
Um, it's important that we check ourselves by the use of intelligent argument and counter argument, a properly founded debate. And most people don't want to debate me because they think I'm odd.
It is true, and some say they would be wrong.
I assume some might.
So I'm going by the law of statistics, if nothing else.
Exactly. I mean, there's got to be one or two, right?
Exactly, quite right. But yes, so dear friends, uh, dear snufflers, um, we will have sent you your packs when we found out that you were thinking about joining us this evening. Don't ask us how. We have our ways, and we'd like you to complete the questionnaire and to use the swab, place it back into the bag and into the return envelope, which you'll see is empty. But they will find their way to us. Don't you worry about that. And then we'll know that you are um, a secure and safe person to have on the stream. It's for your own good. It's for all of our safety. Rick, we find it's much easier to be honest and delve more deeply if we're among trusted people.
Absolutely right. And I don't think we're alone in this. We feel we need to have a level of understanding about those that we interact with, um, because you never know who might be planted by a government agency or the like.
It is true. It's happened in the past, and no doubt it will happen again. Um, I remember last year, Rick and our live show. There was definitely one or two plants there.
I think there were one or two plants, some from the kind of agencies that are so secret that they don't even have initials, let alone
Hmm.
names.
Hmm. Well, indeed, it's many would deny their existence altogether, but if you research well, you can start to find the patterns that suggest there is
I
something.
think anyone watching this will already be aware that if the government officially denies something, then that's how you know it's true.
As you always say, Rick, if you can prove it easily, then it can't be true.
Exactly. Never trust anything that hasn't been officially denied.
Absolutely. It's very much your motto.
Mm.
You were going to get that on a tattoo across your chest. Have you got round to that yet?
Not since I realised that tattoos, the ink that they use does contain metals.
Mm.
And therefore, there is a very grave chance that every time you walk past one of those electromagnetic sensors they have at shops and things like that, they could not only identify your passing, but also read the nature of your tattoo that way.
It's um, it's why my tattoos are done by a specific gentleman in Scotland and we use ground up Tunnocks tea cakes.
Oh, that would probably work.
So you get the art, and it also keeps you away from government
Hmm.
spying, as it were.
It's a perpetual risk, and anyone who's in this community knows that we each have our own areas of interest, overlapping areas of concern, the areas that we research, and therefore we each approach the world just slightly differently. That's, I consider, a good thing. It's nice when you're confronted with somebody who comes up with a theory or an idea that at first glance you think would be absolute lunacy, and then of course it slowly dawns on you that that's what they want you to think.
It's always the way, isn't it? We've been in some big discussions at some point. Some would almost say arguments, those that aren't in the foraging community, where most conversations would be seen as arguments. But we can be deep into a, quite a heavy discussion before we realise that these thoughts have been planted in on us, that that's not what we truly believe. And we actually were thinking the same thing all along, but have been almost conditioned to want to disprove the other person.
Yes, yes, and that is why you need to constantly refine yourself, train yourself, and practice extensively on identifying which random thoughts are not random and which things can be safely trusted upon to build the next level of your understanding, the next critical breakthrough that depends on your prior understanding of an earlier thing. Um, People who believe, for example, um, that cabbages are not capable of being used as scientific instruments are unable to then take the next step to understand that there are entire fields of cabbages that are being used as complex arrays for for sending electromagnetic signals. But you have to have the first part properly embedded first.
You you were telling me the other night about how to understand when things aren't actually random thoughts,
Hmm.
but have actually been planted there. You came up with five really good points. Do you remember any of them now? I was quite drunk at the time, and I've forgotten some.
I do, however, in fairness to my uh, parallel endeavour, I am retaining all of those for
Mm.
a pamphlet.
Oh, fantastic! I was worried that you didn't have any pamphlets coming out in the next couple of days. So
And you will of course be getting partial credit,
thank you very
though
much.
under a pseudonym.
Of course.
I've chosen one for you because I don't want to expose you to any threat.
Hmm.
So I've decided to call you Rick Bishop
Ah, that's wise. That's wise, and
because you've got to keep them guessing.
I think so. And after you have a reputation, after all,
I do have a reputation in certain circles.
so it makes sense for me to fly by night, as it were, under such a pseudonym.
You could make a case, in fact, that I have different reputations in different circles, and most of the circles I move in are undeniably very different.
It's true. Have you managed to replace your shoe that had the higher heel that led you going in circles?
Um, I felt ultimately it would be safer to replace the pair rather than
Hmm.
just the one. However, on careful measurement, I came to the conclusion that all shoes have one heel that's slightly higher than the other.
This is interesting. this is not something we're going to look at tonight, but you've piqued my interest. Just let's at least peek into this evening. Let's not take a full look, but is it always the same heel, Rick?
It is. It's always the left.
So with the left heel higher, it's likely that you'll circle clockwise to your right.
It makes people, without even knowing it, veer to the right. Yes.
Yeah, I've noticed actually there's been a lot of people veering to the right recently.
This is exactly my thought. I think this has been introduced as a tactic, and this is an actual problem that we need to confront. But as you say, the depth of that conspiracy probably goes far beyond what we can cover in the scope of a session like tonight.
Quite right. Keep it light, as the late great Sir Matt Busby once said to me.
Did he?
He
Did he?
did.
That does sound like him.
It does. He was well known for such commentary. But taking the spirit of the great man, should we get into two of our great myths and legends this evening, Rick?
Absolutely.
Let me load up the old editor. He's not as young as he used to be. And get him typing in what we need. Pictures always go off. It's not a government conspiracy. It's just a technological issue. Would you like to go for A or B first, Rick?
Well, obviously, there is a strict alphabetical order, and therefore we should oppose it. On the other hand, people would think that's what we're going to do, so we probably have to go with the more traditional one, just in order to confuse them.
Mm-hmm.
But then they probably think that's what we're going to be doing.
Because I know
So
we're quite contrary.
yeah, so on that basis, I might have to say B.
B, fantastic. Right. I'm glad you picked this one. Actually, it's there's whimsy to it, and you know how I am with whimsy.
Absolutely.
It's too much curry of an evening. Right. Let me. This one, of course, you'll be pleased. I think that you picked this one first in the end. Is the mystery of the flower cellar.
Ah, yes. Well, actually, this is one you brought to my attention, wasn't it? I can't remember how long ago now, several years ago. Um, and this was, as I recall, something that at the time you were excited about, but you hadn't looked into it very far. But since obviously we've both taken a look into it since, I cannot remember exactly how far you were through it when we first discussed it.
So it was at a time when I was struggling quite a lot with what we in the snuffling world call my mojo. I'd run into a lot of dead ends. I've been going around in circles. Which of course, changing my shoes did help that, of course. And I've been I've been trying too hard. You know, I don't know, Rick. You know when finding numbers in newspapers, rather than just finding it in the text, you start actually just writing numbers that have no meaning, but you're sure they're there, but really they're not.
Of
It's
course.
rare, but it's rare. But I've reached that stage trying to find some things, and I found some interesting things from that turned out to be quite true, actually. But nothing that really took my interest. And then one day I was sat there going through these old newspapers, and there was sometimes, Rick, you can't see things that are in front of your very eyes. You almost looking so much that you miss it.
Oh, absolutely. This happened. This is something we guard against constantly.
Exactly. It's very important to go back in with fresh eyes, as they say. Sometimes different substances help you with that. Sometimes just microscopes. Sometimes touching grass amongst some of the less hardened foragers, of course. But in this one, I noticed that in any headline, that had anything about misfortune, um, anything about a death or a lost dog or a crash or something, that in the corner of the picture, somewhere in the foreground, in the background, there would be someone selling flowers. And some were quite small, but Rick, we used some of your powerful magnifying glasses,
Yes.
and you were quite shocked when you noticed it quicker than me, but it was still quite shocking for you.
I think it was. It was a strange occurrence because quite often, as I'm sure many people know, uh, the images used on news stories are recorded contemporaneously at a location, outside a building, to depict a particular person or place or time. But sometimes they're more generic. They come from a photo bank of available pictures that have already been scrubbed of any potential meaning beyond the fact that they are just an image. But once that picture has been selected, the print news version of the story may use a different framing, size, or cropping of the same image. And weirdly, in the vast majority of cases, though not all, the the image of the flower seller only seemed to appear in the print version, not in the online one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which you'd look at it and you'd go, well, that has to be just a coincidence because of the way they've framed the image for an online space where people might want to watch it on one of those newfangled mobile phones, for example. And if so, they want to zoom the picture in a bit and have a different framing of it. Um, but statistically, that only would be likely on a handful of occasions. And that piqued my interest first. And then, of course, as you correctly pointed out, I was kind of missing the statistical anomaly of the sheer number of flower sellers.
Hmm. Yes, there are fewer flower sellers today than there used to be, granted. Often now they're herded into florists. Um, the rogue ones with single flowers and heather and such like are generally forced out of towns by the local constabulary. But still, if you actually truly get into a town or village and walk around, and you actually start paying attention to your surroundings, Rick, there are more flower sellers than you would think. And does the economy support such numbers? Who knows? But whether they're selling or not, they're there.
It does appear that there are an awful lot of them, and they come in a number of guises so that they can hunt in any environment. There are delivery vans associated with it. There are hand delivery experts who go around and walk flowers from place to place. There are florists' shops, florist stalls in markets, people who walk into restaurants bearing bundles of flowers to try and sell them one by one. People walk up to you in the street and offer you a flower. There are, in fact, possibly more florists or people in flower distribution than any other trade on earth.
And I think when you start looking into it and doing the numbers, it will first shock you and surprise you. You'd think, surely there'd be more butchers, surely there would be more bin men, surely there would be more dog walkers. But it's not the case, Rick. And I remember we chose a random town, didn't we? We put a pin in the map, as it were, and we drove off there. We're in the back of Rico's van, and we got out on this random day. It was a Wednesday, I think, of all days, and just wandered the streets. And a couple of dozen, I would say, within a couple of hours.
Oh yes, easily that many. And that's only if you take the literally strict definition of someone selling or moving flowers, because there were flowers everywhere, and some of those were not explicitly being offered for sale, but were nonetheless in a place where they could easily have been taken, moved, or selected for that. Everywhere you looked, there were flower beds, there were flowers in shops, flowers in restaurants, and for the most part, they were not secured behind appropriate levels of protective covering. People could have at will walked up and touched them, smelled them, even taken them. Um, Almost none of the flower beds we saw had any kind of chain link fencing or moat around them. And in shops and restaurants and other places of business, they seem to be just in vases and pots, just on the side, on a table. It was remarkable.
I remember speaking to some locals that day. Um, Rick, you had rushed off to a public uh, lavatory briefly. I believe you'd had something dodgy that didn't fit with you for lunch on the lunch break. And while you were gone, I was speaking to this elderly lady that told me that there'd been a couple of fires in the town in recent months in small cafes. And when you're back, and I told you that, we looked into it, and those cafes, it turned out, were the ones that actually had artificial flowers in them.
Yes, yes, and that was quite an interesting little tidbit. And experienced truth foragers like ourselves, that's the kind of thing that makes you sit up and take notice. So we were, I think, both looking for a way to harmonize this idea of the huge numbers of vendors and movers of
Mm.
flowers with this obscure photographic evidence and some form of possible vengeance against those um, who did not sell the legitimate article, did not display the legitimate
Mm.
article. Um, and I couldn't see any any path to understanding it until, as I recall, you pointed me to an old book called The Day of the Triffids, and I found that quite enlightening.
Well, at its very core, it is a book of warning. It is a book of concern. It was generally regarded as a fictional tome, but over the last 20, 25 years in the snuffling society, we've realised that it could potentially have its roots in truth, Rick.
Yeah, it's obviously, like most things that are entirely factual, it was sold as fiction. Um, because things that are ultimately truthful, it's very hard to get them published in a totalitarian regime like the one that every human lives under. Um, so, as you might imagine, um, I poured through the book in detail with your help, because some of the words and terminology was a little bit more modern than I'm used to. My my literacy really peaks around the late 1700s. That's where I'm most
Mm.
comfortable.
Oh, you are listening to you speak from books of that time is beautiful. It brings a tear to my eye.
Um, yes, and well, I mean that is the purpose. That is the purpose. I speak the way I do, and the purpose that I rubbed onions onto your sunglasses.
It made a lot of sense once you explained why.
Yes, yes, it's a good way of getting toxins out of the system.
It's true, and It was good. It's always good to get the toxins out, and I think after some more onion eye rubbing, um, the night of the night of the great flower selling awakening, I suppose, that night, Rick, and we looked at more newspaper cuttings with tears streaming down our cheeks, the toxins from our brains gone.
Mm.
Um, we started to notice flower sellers in many famous pictures that I'd never seen them before. The Hindenburg disaster, Titanic, many of these great disasters, there were flower sellers there.
There were.
And in some, two or three in the same picture. It's astonishing.
It's remarkable, the images, but also the evidence of the imagery on both the Hindenburg and the Titanic, while you could see flower sellers in the original uncropped images. It was also clear that there were bulbs and flowers being transported on both of those.
It is true. It is true. Rick, you I remember the next day after we'd spent the night in that town, and you went to you wanted to run an experiment about pulling flowers out from the flower beds, and I didn't see you for 7 or 8 hours that day. What happened to you that day?
Well, I began by exploring several different flower beds, and then I got into an altercation with somebody who I thought was being worryingly protective of the flowers that I was investigating. Um, Bear in mind, there were hundreds and hundreds of flowers there, and I was destroying fewer than half. So so I felt very strongly that that altercation was indicative of someone very much working against the purposes of rational inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
And that did delay me for a little while. There was a certain amount of moving at speed and then some hiding. And then after that, I decided to avail myself of one of the public toilets because, as you know, I try to avoid using my own facilities.
Yes, of course. I've never been in a cleaner toilet in all my life than in your house.
It's it is intended for seeing, not using.
Your back garden, on the other hand, is dangerous at best.
Yes, yes, and it does have the unfortunate side effect of it appears to have made the squirrels a bit twitchy.
Mm. I saw a couple of coyotes there the other day, and we live in England.
It's true, but to be fair, those were a present.
Okay. That explains a lot, actually. To deal with the squirrels.
Um, well, no, the coyotes were to deal with the foxes, which were a present to deal with the stoats, which were a present, and they were to deal with the squirrels.
Got you, got you. Okay. Yes. I always wondered what happened to the stoats.
Well, the coyotes should be dealt with fairly soon because the leopards are on the way.
That's good. That's nice. I hope you'll feel safer to go back into your garden to relieve yourself there once more.
Who wouldn't feel safer relieving yourself at night in your back garden knowing that there are leopards in there?
Exactly. Exactly. I feel more comfortable just thinking about it.
Leopards are, I mean, I don't have a lot of personal experience of them, but I'm told that they are famously loyal.
Ferociously so, I've heard.
Yes, aggressively loyal.
Aggressively.
Savagely loyal.
Ah, yes. Oh, what a beautiful pet they must be. So, as people started taking offence at you pulling up flowers left, right, and centre, Rick, did they listen to your explanations?
They I'm not entirely sure that the reason they were unwilling to listen to what is, after all, a very rational explanation, um, was down to them being uh, hired by unknown forces and therefore completely unswayable, or whether they were just so ignorant of the world that they didn't realize that there could be a threat to everything we hold dear lurking in the mulch. Um, but there are other possible explanations. I mean, it might be that they just weren't all that bright, or that they had other things on their mind. There is a disturbing trend that I've noticed where people can only focus on the most primitive of entertainment sources and discuss nothing deeper than who's about to be evicted from a reality television show, the classic Orwellian proll feed.
Mm. It's true, you know. We're very fortunate, you and I, that our minds can travel beyond such things into really channeling down into what's important in life.
Yes, yes, I think that makes a very big difference, and it's a difference that we can only begin to appreciate as we see the rest of the world slowly but surely declining ever further from its theoretical peak of understanding and civilization, um, which I couldn't put an exact date on, but it's a while ago.
Hmm. It certainly is. Um, so, Rick, after we returned from that town, um, if you remember, I posted a flyer on the local church board, saying that we were going to have a large bonfire. If you remember, on the patch of ground behind your garden.
Yes.
Um, we had a few people turn up, um, but I was very much focused on the fire at the time. Of course, you were on flower cellar spotting. That was your role.
Yeah.
Did you manage to find or talk to any flower sellers that turned up for the fire?
Well, it was obviously one of my many practical experiments.
Mm.
The concept was to create a bonfire of sufficient size and scale that it would in itself be newsworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Invite people to come along and then photograph the whole environment and see if, given that it was now a newsworthy picture,
Yes.
flower sellers would appear in some way, shape, or form in the picture. And I'm delighted to be able to report that flower sellers did indeed appear in the picture, even though I do not recall any being present at the evening. I mean, most of the people I remember being there were from the local authority complaining that I didn't have a permit to
Mm-hmm.
build a bonfire so large and one that might threaten other people's homes, livelihoods, and existence.
But it had to be a newsworthy fire. You could just have a small fire.
It had to be newsworthy, otherwise, the experiment would not have worked.
Exactly. Was there any difference between the photos you took and the photos that turned up in the local news that following week?
I think the remarkable thing is that the ones I took and the ones that turned up in the local press were fairly similar, and both indicated the presence of unseen flower sellers, or unseen at the time the pictures were taken live. The only way in which the photographs differed notably, I would say, is in the captioning of them,
Mm.
because the local press was, well, frankly, I think their captions verged on the sarcastic.
You didn't help yourself with some of the answers you gave, though, Rick. To be honest, no. I'm your staunchest defender, of course.
Well, I was. Some of them, I think they thought I might have been inebriated,
Mm.
which is not true. I was definitely sober by British standards.
By British standards.
By British standards. But what I felt very strongly was when I shouted at somebody that they were in danger of being savaged by a maddened fox with a burning tail, they seemed to think that I was in some way delusional. Um, and that's not true. There was, in fact, a maddened fox with a burning tail. Um, it was one that had, at that point, evaded the coyotes, and I thought it was just a public service announcement. But it turns out that if you've built an enormous bonfire, and when people come to tell you to not have an enormous bonfire, you yell at them that they're about to be um, leapt at by a burning fox, they assume you're being hyperbolic.
Mm.
And and for those who did not take me seriously, I can only hope that they recover soon.
Exactly that. That also made the news, of course.
Yes.
And luckily, the payoff to the local hospital, the funding, I think has kept you from more trouble.
And to be fair, um, I think the image of the reporter standing outside the hospital and reporting on these things, which also had a flower cellar
It does have a
tucked away
flower
in the
cellar.
lobby of the hospital that you could just see.
Yeah, there always is, though.
Yeah. I think honestly that only added weight to our convictions.
It's shocking that no one seemed to want to understand our points about the flower cellars. That for some reason that was not the biggest news in this whole thing.
I truthfully think that there may be something in the concept that while our message is clearly not only correct but also abundantly valuable, there may be some lessons we can learn in how to best convey it. Um, I was having this discussion not that long ago when I pointed out that I was nervous that I might have smelt a gas leak near the local council offices in the nearby town, and my solution naturally was the most efficient I could come up with. I needed to simultaneously convey a message of urgency that would be unmistakable and easily recognized as a message, and open a window so that any gas trapped inside could escape. So
Absolutely.
I wrote, "Stop what you're doing if you want to live," on a piece of paper, wrapped it round a brick, and threw it through the window. The noise would have been unmistakably something that would have attracted attention. The note was completely clear and couldn't have been more effective. And I simultaneously opened the window for them. But it turns out the magistrate saw the whole thing completely differently and suggested that the note could have been construed as a threat, something that could only have been more obvious since the unfortunate landing of the brick on a council worker.
Speaking of which, when is your first required therapy session?
Well, that's interesting, actually, because I've already had what was supposed to be my first therapy session. It was a sort of get to know you one rather than the real thing. But after I had it, the therapist who was assigned by the magistrate apparently went back to the magistrate, and the magistrate made it very clear that I am not required to see that therapist anymore. In fact,
Fantastic.
they went to extraordinary lengths to make it clear. I think they said, I do have it here somewhere. I'm not supposed to see the therapist. I'm not allowed within 400 yards of the therapist.
That to me suggests that they think that you don't need therapy.
Absolutely. That is the only possible
It's the
conclusion.
only reason to not go within that much distance.
They are suggesting that not only do I not need any, but I should actively be avoiding it by a considerable margin.
So just back to how you used to be, really.
It's been how I've lived my life so far, and it's always worked out for me.
Very much so. Very much so. It's made you the man you are today.
Certainly one of the things that made me the man I am today. Um, I mean, there are other things. Raw beef, for example.
Raw beef. It's definitely made your fridge the way it is today.
That's true. It's definitely done that. Yes.
And might be why the coyotes are getting quite feral.
I'm not worried about the coyotes. Leopards are on
The
the way.
leopards, of course, the leopards are coming. Everything will be fine with the
Yeah.
leopards. A positive note, perhaps, to finish this segment on, Rick. The thought of leopards roaming your garden, bringing serenity and safety to you and those around you.
And the neighbours, because as I understand it, leopards patrol over quite a large area, so they should be making the entire community safe.
It's like you're doing your bit for the town.
I have never been anything if not public spirited.
Quite
by
right.
British standards.
By British standards. We even say hello to your neighbour once every few months, at Christmas, for example.
I mean, if it's completely unavoidable, sure.
Exactly. So anyway, Rick, we've meandered a little around this, but in the case of the flower seller, where in any newsworthy pictures of tragedy and concern, there's always been flower sellers somewhere in the photo, even if they weren't seen at the time. And through our explorations, there is I'm going for a surfeit of flower sellers, more than you'd expect in town. Is this a greater conspiracy beyond that? What do they? We've never found out what it was, but is our research enough to show there's something there? Rick, in that case, that there is something behind all this, do you believe, or is it just one of those things? Do you remain skeptical?
I think under these circumstances, the symptom is definitely there, but the disease is undiagnosed. But for me, not knowing what the disease is means I cannot wholeheartedly believe yet. I'm afraid I have to remain skeptical just while we continue our investigations, but it is tantalizing these clues.
That's true. There's a lot to hold on to, I feel. And as for myself, I believe. I'm with Sparrow and already half spliced in chat. Um, while there is more to look into the reasoning behind this, there's enough for me to believe there has to be something. Yes, we need to delve further, but I saw the pictures of the great disasters, Rick, but to see the pictures from that fire that we were physically at sent chills down my spine. There is something there. I'd like to delve more into it with you in the coming months, over a few evenings maybe, and a few glasses of your favourite tipple. But for now, I believe there is something.
Excellent. Well, then we must schedule such an opportunity. Um, I think when the leopards arrive, for example, you should definitely come over and see them.
Mm.
I am told by several people that they very much appreciate it if you bring them raw meat, and in order to make them approach, if you spread it on your arms and hands as well, that can be very helpful.
It's good to know. It's important to make friends with your new pets, I guess we're going with.
I suppose that's the closest word, though. I mean, I would say co-workers.
Mm. Probably safer. You have a better record of of not killing your co-workers than you do with your pets.
Marginally, yes.
That's good. Well, something to look forward to our meeting, but for now we need to delve back slightly into the past again. Rick, if you're okay for us to continue.
Of course.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we'll go to our second urban legend for this evening, the one that you did not pick first randomly, um, but it is one that you first came to meet with, Rick.
Mm.
And this is the case of the changing painting.
Yes. Yes. So this is one that I must confess is right up my investigative alley.
Mm.
Um, not not everything necessarily suits me, doesn't appeal to me, doesn't attract my attention the way it perhaps should. But this distinctively um, did appeal to me. Um, Not only because it was intriguing and slightly spooky, but also because there was an enormous and ready access to informed, not to say expert, opinion in this particular case. Because this case led to me ultimately approaching a number of people who'd studied art history at university. And since obviously none of those people have jobs, um, it is very easy to get their time. Um, the the first time I encountered it was not through my own sort of researches into archives, but was very much in a personal capacity, and this related to a trip I took down to the West Country, um, and while there, naturally, I eschewed chain hotels and things like that.
Mhm.
I generally much prefer sleeping under canvas. Um, and in this specific context, I don't mean resting a painting on me. But the little bed and breakfast that I stayed in was undeniably an unusual one because commercially it would seem hard to operate a bed and breakfast that only has one room, if you see what I mean. But this place was very nice, and they had a single room, and then they would serve you breakfast in the morning. Um, in fact, they were very excited to serve you breakfast in the morning, and I suppose that was the first thing I realised. The first night I spent there, in the morning, I came down and had some breakfast, and they seemed genuinely thrilled and excited to see me. Um, and naturally, that's not a reaction I get very often. People are usually very eager for me to finish my investigations with a successful outcome. And I think they interpret that the way that would look as being me going away very soon and never coming back.
Quite often, bed and breakfasts, I've noticed when we've been there together, the breakfasts end up being a banana and a sandwich in a bag.
Exactly. Yes, that is my general experience. So these people, I naturally assumed, were not particularly aware of my investigations or why I was there. Therefore, they weren't wishing me a speedy resolution
Mm.
to my work. Um, anyway, it turned out that when I spoke to them, not many of their guests actually remained through to breakfast. Many of them left in the middle of the night or very early before they could actually be fed. Um, and they were concerned that their property might be haunted or something like that. Well, as you can imagine, well, that was just music to my ears.
Hmm. Anything with the words haunting or spooky or anything like that, Rick? It's 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 like a red rag to a bull.
Oh, it is, yes, um, yes, and though obviously the bulls around here are trained to pursue blue flags,
Mm.
um, but that's beside the point. Our our investigations have often borne fruit when dealing with elements that might be described as truly supernatural in nature. And I found that I was intrigued.
Mm.
So I made sure that I had gathered my kit, and then I explored the entire building, looking for any sign of anything. But I've always felt it wasn't going to really deliver its secrets until night fell. So I went and stiffened my my lungs with some country air and some fine tobacco, before returning and and settling in for the evening. I went up to my little room and I sat there, just paying attention to everything around me, not allowing anything to distract me. And naturally, the things that you normally hear of an evening were happening. There were, the sounds of people outside on the street.
Mhm.
There was the usual moaning and groaning of an old house, the rattling of chains that you naturally experience when you're in a building.
Mhm.
Those kinds of things. But nothing beyond that remotely surprised me. Shadows moved on the wall in unpredictable ways, unrelated to the fall of light, but that's obviously because it was a Thursday.
Hmm.
Um, no, it wasn't until I left the room, having been disappointed in the complete failure of any supernatural activity, that I realised that I should have been paying my attention on the landing. Directly at the top of the stairs, facing down them, was a painting on the wall. And I had noted it on the way in. It was a fairly pleasant, if not especially exciting, watercolor of the hills surrounding this particular bed and breakfast. Um, but when I looked at it by torchlight that evening, it had changed slightly and depicted something slightly different. Um, a scene basically of some uh, criminal, possibly a pirate, being ritually disemboweled with gore and blood everywhere, while some cackling townsfolk looked on in glee, which I felt was quite a different subject matter, and one that might even have not been approached by the same artist.
Hmm. Well, when you when you called me over at that point, um, I'd not seen the first painting that you so described at the time,
Indeed.
but the way you described the beautiful hills painting, although it was clearly amateur work,
Yeah.
um, looked in my mind very different to the painting that confronted me when I arrived. The the owners, of course, were none too pleased with me hammering at their door at 11:30 in the evening. Um, but you explained to them well my purpose for being there, I assume, because they did let me in, albeit with stern looks on their face.
I think they were unfamiliar with the commotion associated with somebody trying to get into the house at night.
Hmm. Hmm.
Most people seem to want to leave.
I think that was that would make sense actually. Um, so my half-hearted attempt at just explaining I was a rent boy for the evening and there's nothing to worry about did
Hmm.
seem to fall on deaf ears. It wasn't what they were interested in.
It's strange. Around here, that excuse can usually explain away pretty much anything,
Yeah,
especially if
we've
you
used
need
it many
access.
times.
Well, yes, I mean,
Mm.
sometimes you need to see someone in some important local notable, someone in authority, a member of parliament, a senior police officer, a local councillor, and that excuse always works with
Oh,
them.
you always wave through,
Yeah.
definitely. But these didn't seem to notice that. And I must admit, um, Rick, the painting at the top of the stairs was quite unpleasant.
I do agree. I think the choice of so much red and orange, given that the background had been rendered in that rather strange sienna hue, it clashed a little bit for my taste.
And as you know by the state of my house, I'm not one for interior design, but even I would not have chosen the colour of that painting to go with that wallpaper.
No, I think it's pretty clear that were you going to have a painting like that situated in the property, then it would have gone actually much better over the dining table.
The colours and the shape, the space made much more sense for that, I feel.
Yes, yes, and of course the signature on the painting was allegedly the same. Though it should be pointed out that though the name appeared to be the same, the though you hadn't seen the original, when I
Mm.
saw the rather pastoral scene, it seemed to be quite a, a gentle cursive stroke of a paintbrush, whereas the jerky, erratic, all capitals rendition of the name on the nighttime version of the picture, I felt it betrayed possibly that the painting was done by somebody who had other things on their mind.
Hmm. Very much so. Of course, after we'd looked at it for a few minutes, flicked it around to check that it wasn't some kind of trick that they'd just flick the painting round for the owners to upset potential guests, as a money making scheme or something like that. Um, we decided to take it in turns for a while, for one person to sit out on the landing while the other returned to their room. We did that a couple of ways each way,
Yeah.
but while one of us was there, there was no change. At least not when I was looking. I don't know if you noticed any in your stint.
I didn't see any transition of the painting at all. However, it was, as it turned out, my turn to sit there as dawn broke.
Mm.
And though I was very careful to be staring at the painting at that exact moment, for whatever reason, I never actually saw it change back. But change back it did. Um, it was it was just suddenly the way it had been in daytime, and it was as if it had always been that. There was no no other way of describing it. And I immediately, of course, checked my camera because I'd taken any number of pictures of the painting in its nighttime
Mm.
form. I hadn't at that point taken any in the daytime form because I hadn't realised its significance at that point. Um, and tragically, all of the pictures I'd taken at night, the pictures were now representing how it looked in daytime as well. So I was unable to capture its nighttime version. And I knew I'd have to wait until night the following night to see if the pictures would change back again in the camera.
Mm. It was strange when I woke the next morning and I came through and looked. Like you say, it was back to the original, the hill surrounding. I do remember the painting, and I did remember that you'd taken photos. But as you say, the photos showed the original painting again. Um, Over breakfast, I did speak to the owner, or at least I tried to speak to the owner. Um, the male owner kept giving me funny looks, winks, and little smiles. That meant that I think he found it hard to take me seriously for some reason in the matter. But he did listen to you talk.
Yes, I mean, I had questions, obviously. I wanted to know the provenance of the painting. Um, and I think that was the moment that I became most interested in it. Because obviously we'd all seen paintings that transition at night time or when it's January or whatever.
Ten a penny, some of these.
They're not that uncommon a story, but on this occasion, the thing that was interesting was that the original painting had been painted by the landlady's mother
Hmm.
um, before she died, and allegedly, and while she was alive, the painting didn't seem to exhibit any strange behavior. Um, they had allegedly noticed that the painting did strange things, but for some reason, I think perhaps because they were so familiar with it on a daily basis, they'd seen it for so long and so frequently, their minds just didn't grasp what they were seeing properly. It's as if their brains just cheerfully said, "Oh yes, that's the painting, exactly as it always had been." We had to literally explain to them in detail that if they studied it carefully, they would see a very different picture. Um, and yes, certainly, the landlord did have difficulty taking you seriously when you explained that because, well, I think when you suggested that he needed to be up late into the night and hanging around with you, he he
Mm.
he may have made some comment about he wasn't sure he could afford that. Um, but I don't think we'd even discussed that there would be any financial payment for our services.
He must have heard that I'd put my rates up recently.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
what with the increase in our costs.
Yeah,
So maybe word gets around.
but maybe it does. Yes, maybe it does. After all, while it is true that I do have a reputation,
Mm.
your reputation is growing.
It's true. It's definitely not to the standard of your reputation, but I think by being around you, it's almost reflected onto me in some ways.
Mm. I think it's actually one of those services that I can provide because I've been doing this for such a long time. I add a degree of gravitas to fellow researchers.
You do, and Skanky Dave's wares add a different aura to me. Recently, I've been told
Yes,
a scent at least.
absolutely. Yes. Um, I think he isn't really diligent enough to be a productive part of an investigative team, but he undeniably has uses.
Very much so, very much so. He's become for us one of our go-tos when we have a big investigation. We would always make the same stops for equipment and for food and drink, trusted individuals, places, and he's part of that now.
And you never know who will bring you the great questions. I mean, we sit around often discussing, the great questions of life and death, but it was Skanky Dave who asked me one of the more compelling questions I think I've ever considered. Because he asked me once, when Calvin Klein was at school, how did he know which underwear was his?
It's the sort of thing. It's the sort of magic he comes up with at 2 in the morning when we're in such a haze.
That's right. It's for whatever reason, he does have a mind that does, get to the heart of a problem.
It is very, very true. Um, I remember we spent a whole evening discussing after his the point he made. What end of the bread is the top and what is the bottom?
Exactly. Yes. Yes. It's one of those um, issues that I think needs to be discussed. Um, there are things that we take for granted, things that we accept as being completely rational, and then you are confronted with the obvious problem that because it is made of fish fingers have to have an orientation. There has to be a head end and a tail end. But it's hard to
It's,
tell, isn't it?
it truly is. I know that the year you spent just eating fish fingers helped you to understand, but for the common person, they would not necessarily know.
That's true. I mean, obviously, it was just fish fingers, but not literally only fish fingers. I mean, there were fish finger sandwiches, fish finger salads.
Hmm. Yeah, of course, you needed all the food groups in there.
Hmm.
Um, when we told Skanky Dave this on our return about the changing painting, he didn't seem too concerned. It sounded like he had experienced such things before. Um, I, don't know whether he'd experienced it in the same way as us, but it got me double guessing myself for a short time, Rick,
Mm.
because if he was so au fait with it and the owners were fine with it, why were we troubled by it and why were so many others terrified enough to leave during the night?
Well, I have been wondering about that, and this is when I went looking for people who'd studied art history, and because they have such copious free time, it was easy to get some insights. And it turns out that actually, while I mean, undeniably a supernatural explanation, they were they were not surprised that paintings changed. When I said, a painting was one on a certain moment, and then at a subsequent moment, it had changed into a different painting,
Mm.
and there all of them seem to agree that the reason that that had to happen was because allegedly there is an entire secret society of people whose job it is to hang and unhang paintings.
Mm-hmm.
They exist in art galleries and stately homes, and they move around, hanging up paintings and taking them down and moving them around and all sorts of things. And I pointed out that that was really not possible under these circumstances. And they said, well, it's the only possible explanation, which, frankly, I'm not convinced that people who studied art history are necessarily the wisest of us.
Mm. Well, many people would agree with such things, I suppose.
Employers, for example,
But it's true, but then when was the last time we listened to what employers would say?
never.
Quite right. So, some of the things they've said about us would stop all of our investigations if we took credence in what they said. But as
Oh,
we know, they're government stooges.
they are for the most part just part of a capitalist machine which is there solely to oppress. It's true. On the other hand, it is through the benefit of them that you get nice things.
It is true. It is true. The did you return? You said you were going to return sort of a week later, but I
Mhm.
lost track of you for a few days. I'd spent an evening with Skanky Dave, and I woke up and it was 4 days later.
Right.
Did you go back in the end?
Yes, I did, and it was at that point that I realised that evening that there really wasn't anything to worry about. Um, I made sure this time to eliminate any. I took equipment with me to make sure that there was no possible way that um, the painting could be interfered with by anybody in the house. I made sure that there were obstacles to arriving at it from any direction, and I set up a chair and got myself comfortable with a cup of tea and well thermos of tea for the night ahead. Um, and I waited as the sun went down, um, and the painting changed. Though once again, though I was staring right at it,
Yeah,
I did not see the change itself.
you missed it. Yeah.
Um, but I'm delighted to say that I did put some portion of the mystery to bed, because though the painting did change, it actually now changed to a different scene.
Okay.
Um, and in this scene, though, again, it was brutal torture, rivers of blood, all the charmless things that had
Yeah.
been in the original. The color palette was actually slightly improved.
Okay.
Um, the background was some quite deep royal blues, which I thought
That
set off the wallpaper rather
that
better
would have
and
worked.
contrasted better with the main subject.
So maybe we were just there on a bad night.
Maybe. Though the thing that I suppose I should say is that the main subject, while still being a victim of horrendous torture and what have you, was now a pretty good likeness of myself.
Interesting.
Yes, and the signature was the same, but next to it, in the same kind of slightly broken writing, were the words "Get out."
Mm.
Um, so while the exact mechanism of how the twist was done, I'm not sure of. It seems pretty clear to me that it's simply a case of some truly terrible marketing, frankly, on the part of the owners of the home. I don't believe for a second that this is actually the way they should encourage people to use their bed and breakfast. And obviously, I would be happy to go back there any time, but
Mm.
I think there are some people who'd be put off by this kind of thing.
I think if you do go back, it might be worth asking them about changing your mattress because when you came back later that day and you changed your clothes, I did notice there was some bruising around your back and your
Yeah.
sides, which suggests yeah, something may need to be changed in that.
Yes, I mean there were other things as well. I don't know exactly how it happened, but my tube of toothpaste that I took with me when I used it the back at home, it appeared that the contents had been replaced with something brown and foul. Um, so there were several ways in which I felt that as a bed and breakfast they could have done a better job in making a more convivial experience.
So I assume you gave them a, a suitably bad rating by British standards.
By British standards, of course, 4.5 stars.
Yes. Oh, they'll feel that burn for long.
They definitely will.
Well, Rick, it's a chilling tale in some ways, and I think some less open-minded to things as we are might find more of a chill in it than we do. But in the case of the changing painting, Rick, do you believe that there is something sinister going on there, or do you remain sceptical?
Uh, I'm not sure I would say sinister. I mean, it's probably just the ghost of the landlady's mother determined to drive away anyone from her home that she didn't personally invite in, or something like that. I don't think it rises to sinister. Do we have to use words like that? But I believe completely that there is something there that it's not worth investigating any further. I think I'm satisfied with the outcome, but definitely it's a real phenomenon. So I believe.
It's a belief from Rick, and I'll be honest. Along with Rick and already half spliced, I know I'm the yes man, and I'm easy. I'm easy. I go into things with big blue open eyes, and I'm easily taken. But while I was skeptical when I first arrived, Rick, um, when I saw the painting change that morning, that was enough for me. And to hear your experiences and to see the bruises and so on, there is something in it. I think you're right. Maybe one shouldn't be so quick as to run screaming from such things
No,
because there's probably a very normal explanation for such things. A basic haunting, a hex,
yeah,
but nothing that people should be concerned about, Rick.
this is it. I mean, it's one thing to fear the possible consequences of the supernatural. I can understand that fear, but after all, how much harm do the spirits and ghosts really do most of the time? I mean, truthfully, you're far more likely to be killed by a werewolf.
Very much so. And I've heard there's even been one or two deaths attributed to leopards over the years.
Well, I mean, I can understand that. I mean, presumably the people who did end up in trouble with leopards, which are as they've been described to me, um, slightly larger than your typical domestic cat. Um, I can only assume that those people did not make sure their pockets were filled with raw meat and they'd rubbed raw meat juices on their arms and hands and walked up to the leopards um, and holding out the meat to them. I can only assume they didn't go to the trouble, as we should all do, to just make friends.
Mm. And I think that's a really warming way to finish this evening, Rick. The thought of friendship and coming together in such things. Um, and in that, Rick, um, I'd like to offer you a, I'd like to offer you out on a date to coming together, doing something together. If you're free, that is, on the 30th of May.
Oh yes.
Um, Back in Faversham, they've asked for the Truth Foragers to appear and to present some of our findings to those in the Guild Hall of all places.
Oh, I think we have to do that. We have to do that. I mean, not only because it was a riotous success last time, and I think we need to follow that up and reach more people, um, open more minds, but also because the Guildhall is a remarkable building. Um, there aren't that many places that are fundamentally they have an upper story without having a lower story underneath it. That's a very unusual sort of place.
Like a lot of your tales, it has legs.
It does have legs.
It's hundreds of years old and it's a beautiful building. I think they've asked for Rico as well, so I suppose we should be in touch with him and see if he wishes to join us. He brings a certain glamour to proceedings.
He brings glamour. He brings excitement, and he, in my experience, brings a camper van.
He does, which is always quite helpful when the local places don't allow us in after the locals
Yes,
make
yes,
suggestions.
and it's not as if we're any trouble. We're always sober by British standards.
By British standards. Exactly. So I look forward to seeing you in person. It's gonna be a busy month, I think, for the two of us, and I feel that I'm I'm hoping that our friendship doesn't drift at all over the next 3 or 4 weeks, and by the 30th of May, it'll be a pleasure to spend a couple of days with you, catching up on our research, finding out how the leopards are doing, and if the coyotes are still in residence or not.
I mean, the one downside with the coyotes, I must say, is that Keris was using it as a reason for not visiting me.
Hmm.
Um, she apparently was I don't know if she was allergic or something, but she said she didn't like the idea of the coyotes. Um, but I'm sure she'll get on much better with the leopards.
Um, she's a woman that likes to wear their um, their pattern upon her body.
That's true. Yes, she enjoys the aesthetic.
Brassy, I heard her referred to as by someone the other day, whatever that means.
I I'm not familiar with the terminology. It must be Welsh slang.
It probably is, to be honest. It probably is. Is Keris okay? Any messages from her over the last couple of weeks?
I haven't actually spoken to her in person for the last few weeks. No, I have uh, seen her through my binoculars, of course.
Oh, you are now in the same town, of course.
That's right. Yes, we tend not to shop in the same places because if that were to happen, she'd leave and go somewhere else. Um, but you know, I've exchanged some messages with her. We have a fun sort of ritual where I push a letter through her letterbox, and then she gets a lawyer to respond on her behalf,
That's fun.
which I think is very fun.
Um, I know that the deal that you ended up making with her about her taking 50% of the money from your pamphlets. Um, is she disappointed in how much she's making out of that?
I can't imagine she would be. I mean, last month alone, that raised nearly 70 pence.
In total or for her alone?
Well, in total.
Hmm. It's not bad. It's not bad. So it's 35 pence.
It's not actually my highest month on record, but it's close.
Oh, congratulations. Things are finally looking up for you.
Yes, I think so. And I'm very excited about some of the pamphlets I have planned. I haven't got them settled in my mind yet, but I have some ideas that I'm just working around, which I think will do a good job.
Fantastic. I look forward to hearing about this, and it'd be wonderful to maybe read one on the 30th if you have one by then.
Oh well, I don't see why not.
Spectacular. Well, until then, Rick, I believe that may be the next time I see you in person, although, of course, we will communicate through fax as we always do. But take care of yourself. Remember to not answer any of those envelopes that keep coming through your door from a whole
No,
range of companies. It's
if they know where you live, you know they're up to no good.
quite right. I've got an embroidery of that on my wall.
Yes, which did not come by post.
It certainly did not. And, can't trust anything that does.
Yeah.
It took 4 pigeons. But thank you, Rick. Thank you, dear Snufflers, for joining us this evening. Well, we hope we've opened your mind to some truths or some possible truths out there this evening. And we'll be back at some point in the coming weeks or months, no doubt, when the boys from the Baltic Star take an evening off and offer us their time. But until then, thank you so much, and keep snuffling for those truth truffles. Good night, Rick.
And good night, Dickie.